Today you will be learning about Mayer's multimedia principle, and I, Matthew Ray, will be your host. Mayer's multimedia principle is that people learn better from words and pictures than from words alone. An example of this would be a student learning about how lightning forms and is presented with both narration and animations to show the formation of lightning. This would be more helpful to most students than simply reading a text on how lightning is formed. The theoretical rationale behind this principle is that pictures help people construct meanings of words. Empirical rationale that supports this were that 100% of the studies presented in the chapter support this principle. Boundary conditions that were presented were that this principle is most beneficial to students with low knowledge of a topic. Graphics can be categorized in four ways: decorative, representational, organizational, and explanative. Decorative graphics are used to engage the reader, but fail to offer any enhancement to the lessons. An example of this would be a picture of kids playing in a park that would be used in a section that is teaching physics principles. The category of representational graphics would be the depiction of a single element with a heading. An example would be a space shuttle just with the title of Space Shuttle above it. Organizational graphics show the relationships between things. An example of this would be a labeled chart of the heart. Explanative graphics explain how systems work. A good example of this would be a pump diagram for how air enters and exits a bicycle pump. Graphic advanced organizers are material that are shown before a text that are used to help increase the understanding that students have while reading a text. Multiple research studies support the use of the multimedia principle. They show how learners that receive text when it is accompanied by illustrations or narration score better on tests than learners receiving just text or narration in 11 out of 11 studies presented. The studies that were shown in the text were primarily vocational, with content that included how brakes, pumps, and generators work. However, there were two school-based studies. One was on how lightning forms, and this was done with college students. This did result in a smaller effect than previous studies, presumably due to how it was presented sequentially compared to concurrently in the diagrams for the vocational learners. The next was for elementary students learning how to add and subtract. They utilized a computer-based simulation game, and this showed greater benefits than simply learning from a textbook alone. Mayer writes that adding illustrations to text or adding animation to narration helps students to better understand the presented explanation. Too much text without any supportive graphics can result in a lost opportunity for learning, so adding images will help foster learning. Adding graphics to existing words-only lessons can improve learning outcomes, so lessons that are text or speech only can be modified to include graphics. I have used the multimedia principle in my own classroom. Recently, students were learning about mythology, and before teaching the myths of a certain culture, I used Google Earth to allow students to visit a region virtually. This allowed them to see the geographical significance of the region and how it shaped the tales. Another way is how I teach guitar, both in private instruction and in after-school clubs. While teaching students how to play songs that use different chords, I have chord diagrams displayed so students can look up and refer to these during instruction whenever they choose. This facilitates learning because it's more helpful for students to have a visual than simply to be hearing instruction from me orally. While reading about Mayer's multimedia principle, I did have some wonderings that came as a result of another book I'm reading, titled Visual Thinking by Temple Grandin. Temple Grandin states that there are two types of learners, verbal learners and visual learners. Could some learners learn less when multimedia is presented instead of just using text alone? Also, is Mayer correct in the statement that low knowledge learners may benefit most? Or is it really just the preferred learning style that is most important? How then can differentiation be used to combat this? Could adaptive learning be the answer, where more images are presented to learners that may benefit from it, or when mastery is not shown?